For 20 years, one man has made Interpol look blind. While police scramble across Europe, issuing warrants and organizing raids, he walked freely through Monaco's casino district, surrounded by bodyguards, posting selfies from five-star restaurants. His name is Necati Arabaci, former president of the Hells Angels, builder of a $500 million criminal empire, wanted by Spanish authorities throughout the entire European Union, and yet completely untouchable. This is the story of how a nightclub bouncer became Europe's most brutal gangster, and why the law can never reach him. If this story already sounds impossible, it gets darker. Drop untouchable in the comments if you're already hooked. And hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Cologne, Germany. Late 1990s. The Kölner Ring entertainment district pulses with neon lights bleeding into rain-soaked pavement. Inside packed nightclubs, bass throbs through walls while crowds dance, oblivious of violence controlling every entrance. At each door stands a bouncer. Not just any bouncer. One of Necati Arabaci's men. Born February 14, 1972, in Turkey, Arabaci arrived in Germany as part of the Turkish immigrant wave seeking better opportunities. What he found instead was a different kind of opportunity, one that didn't involve legal work or honest wages. It involved fear, control, and exploitation on a scale that would eventually span 5 countries. Arabaci started simple. Work as a bouncer. Control who gets in, who gets thrown out, who gets hurt. But Necati wasn't interested in standing at doors forever. He studied the system. He noticed something crucial. The men controlling the doors controlled everything inside. The drugs, the girls, the money. Within a few years, Arabaci didn't just work for clubs. He owned the bouncer network across Cologne's entire entertainment district. Every doorman answered to him. Every club owner paid him. And if they refused, violence arrived swiftly and without warning. But controlling doors was just the surface. What happened behind those doors was far more sinister. Arabaci's gang of bouncers had a specific method. They befriended young women inside the clubs. Vulnerable girls looking for excitement, attention, maybe a way out of difficult lives. The bouncers gained their trust, offered protection, made promises. Then, slowly, systematically, they trapped them. What started as friendship became coercion. What felt like opportunity became imprisonment. These women were funneled into Arabaci's network of brothels across the Rhine-Ruhr region of Germany. They became commodities, products in a business empire built on human suffering. By the early 2000s, Necati Arabaci controlled multiple brothels, a vast network of extortion rackets, and had connections reaching into drug trafficking operations. His reputation grew. Brutal, strategic, a man who whispered threats that everyone knew he'd fulfill. Police began noticing. Too many complaints, too many disappearances, too many whispers of a Turkish gangster who seemed to operate with complete impunity. Investigators started building a case. It would take years. But in 2002, they finally moved. The arrest came suddenly. German authorities raided multiple locations simultaneously. They seized Arabaci along with evidence of pimping, human trafficking, assault, extortion, weapons violations, and racketeering. It looked like the end. The bouncer-turned-crime boss was finally caught. Prosecutors prepared what they believed would be an airtight case. They had witnesses. They had documents. They had surveillance. Necati Arabaci was going down, or so they thought. During his 2004 trial, something unexpected happened. Arabaci confessed. Not to everything, but to enough. It was a calculated move. By admitting guilt to certain charges, he controlled the narrative, shaped the sentence, avoided more serious accusations. The court sentenced him to 9 years in prison. For a criminal empire spanning multiple cities and destroying countless lives, 9 years seemed almost merciful. But Necati had already planned several moves ahead. Prison wasn't the end. It was an intermission. Even from behind bars, Arabaci's empire continued operating. Police suspected he still controlled the Colosseum brothel in Augsburg while sitting in a German prison cell. How? Through loyal lieutenants, through coded messages during visits, through a network so deeply embedded that removing its head didn't kill the body. Investigators monitored him constantly, hoping to catch him directing operations. They eventually did, but what they discovered was far more disturbing than they imagined. In 2003, while detained and awaiting trial, Arabaci did something that would define just how dangerous he truly was. He plotted to assassinate the prosecutor handling his case. Not just threaten, not just intimidate, kill. He hired an Albanian contract killer from Duisburg, a professional with a reputation for completing jobs without leaving evidence. The plan was detailed. The prosecutor would be eliminated before the trial could proceed. With the key legal threat removed, Arabaci believed he could manipulate the case, corrupt witnesses, and walk free. It was audacious, it was brutal, and it almost worked. Fortunately for the prosecutor, German police had bugged the prison visiting rooms. They intercepted the conversations. The prosecutor was immediately placed under heavy police protection and assigned bodyguards. Authorities now had evidence of attempted murder for hire. They prosecuted Arabaci again, hoping to secure Sicherungsverwahrung, indefinite imprisonment reserved for Germany's most dangerous criminals. This should have been the final nail. Arabaci facing life behind bars with no possibility of release. But then, something incredible happened. During the trial for the assassination plot, lawyers discovered critical mistranslations in the transcripts. The bugged conversations, originally in Turkish and German, had been translated incorrectly. Key phrases that seemed to indicate a murder contract were, according to new translations, ambiguous. The court acquitted him of the attempted murder charges. The man who tried to kill a prosecutor walked away from that charge completely free. In 2007, Arabaci completed enough of his 9-year sentence to qualify for deportation. German authorities, desperate to remove him permanently, deported him to Turkey with a lifetime ban from German territory. He was gone, out of Europe, out of their jurisdiction. German police celebrated quietly, believing they'd finally rid themselves of one of the country's most dangerous criminals. The prosecutor who had nearly been killed fled Germany the same year Arabaci was deported, fearing retaliation even from thousands of miles away. Everyone assumed the Arabaci empire was finished. They couldn't have been more wrong. Turkey became Necati's new kingdom. Far from being neutralized, he was liberated. In Turkey, he was a citizen, protected by laws that prohibit extraditing Turkish nationals to foreign countries. No matter what crimes he committed in Europe, no matter what warrants were issued, Turkey would not hand him over. And Arabaci knew this. He understood the legal shield his citizenship provided. He used it masterfully. By 2010, something remarkable happened. International Hells Angels leadership held a meeting in Izmir, Turkey. Among those in attendance was Necati Arabaci, freshly appointed as president of the Hells Angels MC Nomads Turkey. This was significant. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, one of the world's most notorious outlaw biker gangs, had given Arabaci a leadership position. Not just any position. President of an entire chapter. Some observers found this strange. Arabaci wasn't a traditional biker. He didn't come up through motorcycle culture. He was a nightclub bouncer turned human trafficker. But the Hells Angels saw something else. They saw a man who built an empire through violence and cunning. A man who controlled territories. A man who commanded loyalty and fear. A man who, even after deportation and imprisonment, remained powerful. The Hells Angels connection gave Arabaci something invaluable: international legitimacy within the criminal underworld. He wasn't just a Turkish gangster anymore. He was a Hells Angels president. That title carried weight. It opened doors. It connected him to criminal networks across Europe, North America, and beyond. Police watched nervously as Arabaci's influence grew. In 2013, when previous European Hells Angels leader Frank Hainbuth was arrested in Spain, investigators identified Arabaci as a possible successor for leadership of a European Hells Angels network. The deported criminal was being considered for one of the most powerful positions in organized crime. Before I reveal what happened next, quick question. Do you think Necati will ever face justice? Comment your theory below. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time, because the best part is coming. But Arabaci's resurrection wasn't going unnoticed by all authorities. Spanish investigators had been tracking his activities for years. They knew he was involved in brothels operating in Spain. They had evidence of drug trafficking networks connected to him. They documented extortion schemes and criminal organization leadership. In 2015, Spanish authorities made their move. They issued a European arrest warrant for Necati Arabaci, valid throughout the entire European Union. The charges were severe: membership in a criminal organization, extortion, drug trafficking, and involvement in running illegal brothels. If arrested anywhere in the EU, Arabaci would be immediately extradited to Spain to face trial. There was just one problem. Arabaci wasn't in the European Union. He was in Turkey. And Turkey, as mentioned, does not extradite its own citizens. The Spanish warrant was legally valid across 27 countries, but completely powerless in the one country where Arabaci lived. It was the ultimate legal paradox. Everyone knew where he was. Everyone knew what he'd done, but no one could touch him. So Necati Arabaci did what any intelligent criminal in his position would do. He lived openly, publicly, defiantly. By the mid-2010s, reports emerged of Arabaci living between Turkey and Dubai, another jurisdiction friendly to those avoiding European law. He frequented expensive restaurants. He traveled on private jets. He surrounded himself with bodyguards and luxury vehicles. And most remarkably, he began documenting it all on social media. In 2024 and 2025, something unexpected happened. Necati Arabaci became an internet celebrity. His Instagram and TikTok accounts exploded with followers. Videos of him dining in exclusive restaurants, walking through Monaco's Port Hercules, posing beside luxury cars, went viral. One video alone received over 15 million views. Comments ranged from admiration to disgust, but they all had one thing in common: fascination. People couldn't believe someone so openly wanted by European authorities was living this visibly, this lavishly, this freely. Monaco became one of his favorite destinations. The tiny principality on the French Riviera, known for its billionaires, casinos, and Formula One racing, welcomed Arabaci like any other wealthy visitor. He walked streets where Interpol officers might be vacationing. He dined in restaurants where European politicians ate. He posted photos with geotags showing exactly where he was. And nothing happened. No arrest. No detention. No extradition. Monaco authorities, while technically part European law enforcement cooperation, seemed either unable or unwilling to move against him. Perhaps diplomatic complications with Turkey made it difficult. Perhaps his wealth and connections provided protection. Or perhaps, most cynically, Monaco simply didn't care enough about a Spanish warrant to risk international incidents. The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a man wanted for human trafficking, drug crimes, and running a criminal empire, living openly in one of Europe's most exclusive locations, posting about it online, and facing zero consequences. It made a mockery of the European arrest warrant system. It made Interpol look powerless. It made everyone asking the same question: how is this possible? The answer lies in jurisdictional complexity and political calculation. Turkey benefits from not extraditing Arabaci. He's a Turkish citizen. Handing him over would set precedents Turkey doesn't want. Dubai operates similarly, with extradition treaties that favor wealthy residents. Monaco, while technically European, has unique political status that complicates enforcement. And Spain, despite issuing the warrant, lacks the diplomatic leverage to force action. So Arabaci exists in the cracks, the spaces between laws, the gaps in international cooperation. He's not hiding. He's simply unreachable. His estimated fortune tells a fuller story. Intelligence sources estimate Arabaci's criminal empire generated approximately $500 million over his career. $500 million built on prostitution, human trafficking, extortion, and drug distribution. Money made by destroying lives, by trapping vulnerable women in exploitation, by threatening and harming anyone who challenged him. And he gets to keep it, live off it, flaunt it. In September 2025, there was a brief moment of hope for those seeking justice. Arabaci was detained in Slovakia while traveling through the country. European authorities celebrated. Finally, he'd made a mistake. Finally, He'd stepped into a jurisdiction where the warrant could be enforced. Extradition proceedings would begin. Justice would be served. But within hours, Arabaci was released. The details remain murky. Some reports suggest diplomatic pressure from Turkey. Others hint at legal technicalities. A few whisper about corruption. Whatever the reason, Necati Arabaci walked out of Slovakian custody and continued his life exactly as before. So here's the real question that haunts investigators and victims alike. Is Necati Arabaci a criminal genius, or just lucky in a broken system? Did he masterfully exploit legal loopholes and jurisdictional gaps? Or did a series of failures by law enforcement and bureaucracy simply allow him to slip through? The answer, frustratingly, is probably both. Arabaci is undeniably intelligent. His ability to maintain control of criminal operations while in prison shows sophisticated planning. His strategic use of Turkish citizenship shows awareness of international law. His cultivation of the Hells Angels connection shows understanding of criminal hierarchy and power. But he's also been lucky. Lucky that mistranslations ruined the assassination case. Lucky that Turkey refuses extradition. Lucky that Monaco doesn't prioritize Spanish warrants. Lucky that Slovakia released him. The victims aren't lucky. The women trafficked through his network carry trauma that never fades. The families affected by drugs he helped distribute live with permanent loss. The business owners extorted by his organization suffered financially and psychologically. The prosecutor who fled Germany in fear will never feel completely safe. For them, Arabaci's freedom isn't a legal technicality. It's a moral obscenity. Yet there he remains, walking Monaco streets, posting on Instagram, living in Dubai's luxury towers, traveling between countries that won't arrest him. His European arrest warrant still active, still valid, still completely meaningless. Spanish authorities still want him. German police still monitor his movements. Interpol still lists him. And none of it matters. There's a deeper lesson here about international justice, or rather its absence. The European Union, for all its cooperation and shared legal frameworks, cannot compel a non-member country to hand over its citizens. Interpol, despite its global reach, has no arrest powers. It relies entirely on member states choosing to act. Extradition treaties, no matter how comprehensive, require political will to enforce. And political will, especially involving powerful individuals with resources and connections, is often lacking. Necati Arabaci exploits every single one of these weaknesses. He exists as proof that if you're smart enough, brutal enough, and lucky enough, you can commit horrific crimes and live freely afterward. Some argue he's a symbol of everything broken in how nations handle transnational crime. Others see him as an inevitable result of globalization meeting organized crime. A few even admire his audacity, treating him like some kind of outlaw folk hero. That last group forgets the women he trafficked. They forget the lives destroyed in his brothels. They forget the violence and fear he spread across Germany's nightlife. They see only the surface, the luxury, the defiance, the apparent victory over system. They don't see what's beneath. So that's the story of Necati Arabaci, the bouncer who became a crime boss, the prisoner who kept running his empire from a cell, the deported criminal who became a Hells Angels president, the wanted man who walks free in Monaco, the trafficker who posts selfies with millions of views, the man who tried to murder a prosecutor and got acquitted on a technicality, the gangster who built a $500 million empire on human suffering and keeps every penny. Today, October 2025, while you watch this, Necati Arabaci is somewhere between Monaco, Dubai, and Istanbul. Police know his location. Interpol tracks his movements. The European arrest warrant sits in databases across the continent. And he doesn't care, because he's learned the ultimate lesson of modern international crime. Jurisdiction is everything. The law can want you. Investigators can know exactly where you are. Victims can cry for justice. None of it matters if you're standing in a place where no one will arrest you. What do you think will happen to Necati Arabaci? Will Turkey ever change its extradition policies? Will he eventually slip up and get caught in the wrong country? Or will he live out his entire life in luxury, untouched by consequences? Is he a criminal genius who mastered the system, or a brutal thug who got insanely lucky? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you think about this case, because it challenges everything we believe about international justice. If you want more shocking true crime stories like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Next up, we're diving into another case that's even more twisted. Another criminal who seemed untouchable until one unexpected mistake brought everything crashing down. Thanks for watching.